Hey everybody. Today I'm going to talk about everybody's favorite new AI, ChatGPT, and look at how it can help you with Excel and whether you should use it or not. Okay? So I'm going to start with asking it to just write up a simple macro for me in VBA. So the key thing with ChatGPT is wording it in a way where it can understand what you're trying to do. So I'm going to start off by saying, write a macro in VBA, right? So we specify Visual Basic to loop through all the cells and multiply them by 10. Hit enter. And so one of the really useful things about ChatGPT is it's really, really good at coding and helping you to do this. So if you're not sure how to create a macro or where to start with it, this is actually a really good place to do it. I mean, you could do the manual process of, let's say, a macro recorder to record all your steps, but for complex things like this where you're doing looping, where you can't do a macro recorder, this is actually really helpful. Previously what you may do is look up in Google, search through web forms to find this, but with ChatGPT it actually gives you a code. It makes it easy just to copy it and paste it into your sheet and into your Visual Basic and run it. So the really cool thing is it does that really well. So it's good whether you're new to VBA and just want to learn it, or perhaps you have some code and you're struggling with just a certain element of it and just want a way to be able to confirm that you're doing it correctly. But either way, with ChatGPT, there is a definite advantage of using it to help you with coding. So I like it from that perspective because it can be really useful there. Another thing you can do is you can also have it help you write formulas. So I'm going to give you another example here. So I'm going to start with, again, write an Excel formula. So we specify that it's Excel we're doing to do a lookup and extract multiple fields from a table. Now this one's a bit interesting, and I'll show you why in a second. So there's a couple ways you can do this, and here it's doing VLOOKUP. Now, interesting enough, it's saying you can use the VLOOKUP function, but it's using index and match here. And so this is the result that I was looking for, but it's confusing. It's mentioning VLOOKUP, but it's going and doing index and match, but it's still using those curly brackets, which is what I was hoping for it to do. Now, earlier when I asked it this question, it gave me a different result. We're using index and match, but it was using two separate lookups and using the concatenate or the ampersand to link them together. So you had one lookup and then another lookup and then adding them together. So sometimes it can be a bit of a hit or miss how it's going to formulate this for you. And so I guess that's the bit of the caveat in there, is you may not get the same response if you ask it the same thing a day or two later. So that's just one of the inconsistencies that I've seen with it, is that you may not always get the same answer. This is the one that I would have preferred to see, but in the past I saw, like I said, where it's stitched together two index and match formulas, which either one works, but obviously something like this would be more efficient. And one thing I like about it here is it gives you a description of the issue of in this formula is assuming A2 to D6 is your data table, G2 is the lookup, and then 1 through 3 as an array of column numbers to extract. Right, so it explains what it's doing at the same time, so it can be really useful. Again, this is probably more useful if you're new to Excel, but the challenge though in that case would be that you need to know how to word it to make it clear for the AI to know exactly what you're looking for. Because in some cases, if you word it slightly differently, then you may not get the same results. Like, let's change this slightly and actually explicitly mention using a VLOOKUP. So let's do write an Excel formula, and let's say, and use VLOOKUP to extract multiple fields from a table. So changing it a little bit. Here we're just saying, here I just said actually to do a lookup. And even though it said it was doing VLOOKUP, that's not what it did. So let's explicitly mention using a VLOOKUP to extract multiple fields, and let's see if it does the same thing. And so here it's saying it's going to combine VLOOKUP and index. So in this case, it does use the VLOOKUP and the same sort of function. So in this case, it did follow my specific instructions of actually including it into a VLOOKUP. I wouldn't have used the index perhaps, but you know, with Excel, there's never only one way to do something. So it'll still give you the information that you need as far as making it a possibility, and at least by telling you what it's assuming these variables are, A2 to D6, and what G2 should be, you can fill in your own blanks in there to repurpose it for your own data sets. So that's where you can see a bit of variability depending on how you were. Here I just mentioned a lookup, and oddly enough, it didn't even include VLOOKUP. Here I explicitly used VLOOKUP, and then it did add a VLOOKUP, but within the context of an index function. So in summary, I'd say ChatGPT is useful for Excel, especially if you're learning it or want to learn some more complex things, especially when it comes on the coding side. But you just want to be careful around your wording. If you specifically want a certain function to be used, then mention it. And I'd suggest phrasing it in a way where you're telling it what to do, write an Excel formula, write code in VBA, whatever the case may be, just so it's clear to it what you want to accomplish. And maybe provide as much detail as you can without going into the specifics of your data set, because obviously that's not going to be too helpful. You're looking for something that I think is at least generic that you can plug in your numbers into, just to get an idea of the syntax that you need to use. But there's a really cool way to make it easier to find answers to your Excel questions, because in the past, like I said, you'd probably have to go through Google searches and looking through forums and discussion questions about that sort of stuff. But here it makes it easy to consolidate all this and gives you a convenient code that you can copy in and test right into your file. So overall, ChatGPT is useful. It's just a matter of how it evolves over time and how it changes. But right now, there's definitely a lot of value for Excel users to get out of this.